What's up everybody, this is Ven, and I welcome you to the MOC Spotlight, the show where we take apart what you build. For today's episode, we'll be going over a huge, complex, intriguing creation that goes by the wonderfully unique name of Bionicle. Yeah, that's right, I was pretty disappointed too. Anyway, I found this MOC under the Brickshelf gallery of username looknob, or looknob. Not sure how to pronounce this, and I don't think you can really blame me for this one. So moving on, allow me to tell you about my method of reviewing, which involves a point system that is based on 3 fundamental attributes: the overall appearance of the MOC, the build of the MOC itself, and the concept and ideas behind the MOC's creation. Each quality will mount up to 5 points, leading up to a final score that will be determined at the end of the episode. And please remember that this is all based on my opinion. Now let's get this started. First thing I noticed was, wow, this is a big MOC. Or maybe it just looks really big because it's made up of a lot of big clunky parts. There's no size comparison to anything else that I could find, but I can still see this as quite the hefty creation. That said, I also couldn't help but notice how busy this MOC looks. Surprisingly, I'm not all too bothered by this. The busy textures and clunky look appears to be fairly consistent throughout the MOC, and we are still left with an impressive, beefy, clearly humanoid silhouette. This aesthetic reminds me of a Transformer design where there's a lot of mechanical parts and small distinctive components that make up the whole figure. Blend that with Bionicle's old aesthetical style with the pistons and the greebles we've all come to know and love, and you pretty much have something like this as a result. It's a good thing that the colors are under control and confined to different shades of black and red. Otherwise, this would look pretty bad. Typically, I prefer MOCs with a cleaner, smoother aesthetic because it evokes some sense of it being completed or finalized, etc. But I think in this case, this makes the MOC look a bit more interesting than anything. Like, you can't help but fixate on some smaller portions of the MOC just to see how it was put together. Except, I don't really care for the weapon all too much. Just, I don't know, it doesn't really look all too good to me. But anywho, I know I caught myself staring at the legs and the shoulders for the longest time. These parts intrigue me quite a lot, mostly in the sense of the build, because it's just bewildering to me how these parts make up such a great shape and at the same time maintain structural integrity. And of course, let's not ignore this unique design for a head. Definitely screams Michael Bay Transformer to me, but despite this, I like it. I count 3 eyes on this head. Or actually, I should probably say 5, because there's a friggin' dragon head sticking out on the back of it. And while we're on the back already, oh mama, look at this build, man. I gotta say, this MOC does a great job utilizing these specialized Bionicle parts to add to the structure of the thing, rather than its appearance. Like, this is truly an example of building with the system of original Bionicle, where all you had were these big, chunky, greebly parts and bits of technic here and there. This is one of the best things you could do before CCBS became a thing. I mean, honestly, what's impressive to me is that a MOC this clunky maintains a sufficient amount of stability. Everything is packed together quite well, giving it this solidified, bulky look, despite a few gaps here and there. Some are quite obvious. But another thing to note is, well, heck, this builder even threw pistons into the legs, the torso, and the arms to hold the whole thing up. It's insanity. Now, something I noticed, this MOC appears to be a little bit restricted in its articulation. Like, it appears to have your basic servings of articulated arms, legs, neck, elbow, knee, you know, whatever. And it's even bundled with articulated fingers too, so that's pretty neat. But anyway, it kind of looks like these pistons on the sides of the torso are kind of holding down the arms to a point where you can't really raise them up too high without screwing up the integrity of this build. A bit of a shame. Also, I'm not sure if I can trust that these pistons over here are tightly secured to the feet. That seems a bit highly suspect to me. It looks like this MOC, while being so well thought out in its build, for the most part, still has a bit of refining to go through. And it actually did at some point. Like, there is a version 2 of this creation that solves some of these problems, but creates newer ones, and honestly I prefer the original for several reasons that I don't really feel like delving too much on. But I will say this, I think the original version of the MOC holds its own really well, looks very visually pleasing in comparison. I only wish it had an actual name so I could get a better idea of the influence and grand idea behind its design, because without that, it's going to make talking about concepts a little bit tricky. So far, I haven't found any sort of description out there attached to this MOC. Hopefully looknob is still out there on the interwebs, browsing, posting his creations on Brickshelf and the like, so someday he can see this video and maybe do this one small favor. Tell me what the big idea was. Tell me what this thing is supposed to be. What was the inspiration? Did it just come out of your imagination? I need to know. But as it stands right now, I can see many good small ideas just in the MOC's design alone. It's big, robotic, humanoid, armored, and it has a very distinct silhouette that, I don't know, to me it kind of screams Japanese influence. Like it really just reminds me of a transformer made out of bionicle parts. Clearly there was a lot of thought put into the MOC's appearance and build, and this is evident by how these parts were utilized. He uses very specific parts to fit into very particular areas. Take note of the torso and how many different specialized parts were fit into it. It's intriguing just seeing how cleverly thought out this was. If only we had some kind of explanation for this creation, but we don't. So we might as well end here and throw out some scores, end the video, blah blah. So, in terms of appearance, this MOC receives a 4 out of 5. As much as I enjoy this MOC silhouette and bulkiness and almost everything else, it does come off as a bit too exposed in some areas, leaving a bit of gappiness that's hard not to notice. However, for the most part, this is a really neat looking MOC and maintains a classic bionicle visual style while also offering something unique and interesting to look at like almost every corner. In terms of the build, this MOC receives a 4 out of 5. I'll definitely give it this. For the most part, it is really well built. This is such a creative usage of the old bionicle system that results in a fairly solid structure throughout, and also provides a lot of eye candy for other mockists like me, who would be intrigued to see how these parts were used and applied into something like this. However, there are a few problems with the MOC that prevents me from praising it more. Part of it is the gappiness, and part of it is that some portions are just begging to be redone and cleaned up. As far as the concept goes, this MOC receives a 3.5 out of 5. The presentation of this MOC is practically non-existent. I mean, I found it on Brickshelf and nothing else, so that already says a lot. The name of it is Bionicle. It's just Bionicle, nothing else, and it's left at that without any description or context other than it's obvious that the MOC was built from primarily bionicle elements. With that background, you would expect a pretty uninspired MOC, but honestly, this MOC does come off looking much more creative and much more inspired than many other MOCs out there. The application of the parts is astounding, though it could use a little bit of work, a little bit of refinement, but just not too much. No big changes really, just some cleaning up and maybe a bit more character-defining aspects. And it could definitely use a real name. Biological Chronicle, not only is it taken, but it also doesn't work. With all that said, we come to our final score of 11.5 out of 15. That does seem a little bit low, but I think it truly represents my final thoughts on this MOC. It's unfinished, and it just pains me because it looks so close to being finished, so frickin' close. It's gappy, the build is flawed, but these things could have been fixed fairly easily, but the builder just kinda left it as it was, and he didn't even bother giving it a real name. Now I say this like it's some sort of horrible dramatic story about abandonment, but the point I'm actually getting at is that this MOC essentially comes off as an experiment. Like, the dude was given some bionicle parts, he felt like building something out of it, and what came to mind was big Japanese robot thing. And once he built it, he applied his ideas and style to it and just kinda left it as it was, didn't really take a step into making this rough draft into a final draft. Well, at least for a while, until he decided to almost completely redo it. But as this MOC stands right now, or, well, stood before, it's like a track runner tripped just before the finish line and decided to just go home from there. It was on a really great course, it's a great looking MOC, but it looks like 95% complete, or maybe 90% complete, and it has no name. Oh well, no big deal. Regardless, great job, Looknob. You did great with this creation. I do hope to see more from you, and I'd definitely like to see something from you viewers, so please post your creations on our message boards located at board.ttvpodcast.com. Look for the LEGO Creations category, shouldn't be that hard to find, and post your toast there for a chance to become possibly recognized for the MOC Spotlight in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.